in the history of Canadian politics, when you think of politicians that are still mentioned today, there's not really many or any women that, you know, stand out. It's just a fact. It's not sexist. It's just, it is what it is. They haven't made a name for themselves. But that's kind of changing right now. You have conservative MPs that are stepping up to the plate. And although they're not leaders of the party yet, they are very much making a name for themselves. And that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I want to encourage you guys to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. One of the front runners for the Conservative Party on the female side is Melissa Lantsman, and she does not hold anything back. She is very vocal. She's very smart. She's very witty. And well, that's why we're going to start off with her clip at the beginning of this video. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this question period heated debate.
I apologize to the Minister.
Oh, the Liberals don't care at all about Indigenous
services.
That's why they've left them without clean water.
Today, the government was forced to admit that the carbon tax will cost every single Canadian household more than $1,800 in lost GDP. That's a $30 billion secret they kept. Not once in anything ever released claiming that Canadians were somehow better off with the carbon tax did the minister include these devastating economic costs he knew existed, because it was more important for him to continue to spread the falsehood. Canadians deserve to know they deserve a minister who will tell the truth. If he's incapable of that, when's he going to resign?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said earlier in this House, it is great to see that the Conservative Party of Canada now actually believes that economists are thoughtful and give good advice. 300 of them signed a letter that told people 8 out of 10 Canadian families do get more money back. I would encourage my honourable colleague to read that letter. And certainly, I would say that as we move forward, we must have a plan to address climate change, but we must do so in a manner that's affordable. That's exactly what carbon pricing does. That is something that we will continue to do, balancing the environment and the economy versus a party that actually has no plan for the environment whatsoever.
The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
This government that gagged the parliamentary budget officer that actually told Canadians the truth, and they cherry-picked portions of the data that supports their version of the truth, which makes them look even more guilty. If they truly believed that the carbon tax was helping, they would release the report. Instead, they kept a $30 billion secret from Canadians. The minister wanted to tell Canadians that paying more for gas, for groceries, for home heating, they would be better off. Misleading Canadians about $30 billion. I don't know how he looks anyone in the face. When will the Prime Minister actually fire him?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
How can the Conservative Party of Canada and those members who campaign to put in place a price on pollution, Mr. Speaker, can look anyone in the eyes is beyond me. How can they look anyone in the eyes and say, we're doing nothing to protect you against forest fires, we're doing nothing to protect you against hurricanes, we're doing nothing to protect you against flooding, Mr. Speaker. They have no plan for the economy, they have no plan for climate change, and they have no plan to work with communities to protect them from the devastating impacts of climate change.
Then why is your boss jet setting around the world, you hypocrite?
The Honourable Member from Haldimand, Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, this government tried so hard to hide the truth that the carbon tax was driving up the cost of everything in Canada. The parliamentary budget officer even had to call them out for blocking the release of their own economic impact report. They were literally forced to release the report. And now we all know that each Canadian family is losing at least $1,800 a year, and there's no rebate for that. So when will this Environment Minister finally resign for misleading Canadians?
There you go.
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
I would encourage my honourable colleagues on the other side of the House to actually go and talk to the PBO, to talk to economists, to talk to the 300 economists who have said 8 out of 10 Canadian families get more money back, and it's those that live on modest incomes that actually do the best. But I would say the collective amnesia that actually exists on the other side of the House is the pinnacle of hypocrisy. Every one of those members, including the member opposite who asked the question, putting in place a price on pollution. It is hypocrisy.
He's got kind of a bit of a air dick-sucking motion.
What is hypocritical, Mr. Speaker, is that even while their carbon tax was costing families more than $1,800 a year, even while they knew that over 2 million Canadian families per month were accessing the food banks, the Liberals continued to try to convince Canadians that they were better off for paying a higher carbon tax. A $1,800 tax is a lot of money to many Canadians. So, when will this Liberal government give Canadians back their money and clear the environment?
Intrusive thought, my bad.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, this government is very proud of this environment minister who has put the first credible plan on the table in history to meet our Paris agreements, the Paris agreement that they want to rip up. No surprise, they've gotten all of the data today that shows that 8 out of 10 Canadians, Mr. Speaker,
I don't know what's running away faster, his accountability or his hairline. Come on, bro.
in our society, just like they want to move on from what they did 2 days ago, which was stand up for the 0.13% of Canadians, not the people who draw a paycheck, make an honest living, go to work every day, and pay their taxes on time, Mr. Speaker.
I know all members are excited to be returning to their ridings for the weekend, but I'll ask if we could, to move things along quickly, I'll ask members only to take the floor when they have recognized by the chair.
While Canadians are struggling to make ends meet, this Prime Minister put a gag order on the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Why? To prevent the PBO from releasing the full report exposing the true cost of the NDP Liberal carbon tax. We now know that the carbon tax will cost Canadians $30 billion in economic activity. That's over $1,800 for every family. So why continue to muzzle the PBO? Is it because the report is so damning it should cost the minister his job? When will the Prime Minister fire his truth-evading minister?
Jesus, man.
Minister for Innovation.
Speaker, on this side of the House, I can tell you, and Canadians are proud of the environment minister. You know what? Because he is standing up for what is right for this country, Mr. Speaker. Whilst you have the climate deniers on the other side, they want to see the planet burning. We want to act for our children. We want to act for future generation. Mr. Speaker, 8 family out of 10. 8 out of 10. We know it's tough to go beyond 6 for these guys. It's just 6 plus 2. That gets to 8. 6 plus 4 gets to 10. 8 out of 10 will get more money, Mr. Speaker. We'll fight for Canadians at every step of the way. We'll fight for climate change, and we'll fight for our children, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Red Deer Lacombe.
This Prime Minister's dirty $30 billion secret has been exposed. His carbon tax will cost Canadian families far more than they pay into it. That's money out of the pockets of people trying to feed their kids, heat their homes, pay their rent, and fill up their cars. So why are the Liberals so afraid of releasing the full report? Why is the budget officer muzzled? If the NDP Liberals won't end the cover-up, tell the truth, and release the full cost of the carbon tax, then the minister should resign. Why won't he get to it?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, there's no surprise these Conservatives want to move on from the fiasco of 2 days ago when they voted for the 0.13% of taxpayers and set aside the 99.87% of taxpayers who are not affected by a capital gains change. They want to stand up for people who've made $250,000 on investments in a given year, and they won't stand up for the electricians, the farmers, the janitors who earn a paycheck every week and do it honestly, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, a secret government report confirms what Canadians already know. The carbon tax is costing Canadians more than they're getting back. The report says the carbon tax is costing Canadians $30 billion a year. That's almost $2,000 a household per year. This government's not worth the cost. when will the Environment Minister resign?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And it looks like the Conservatives want to change the channel. I mean, yesterday they were all about talking about capital gains, fighting for the rich guy, you know, holding up plumbers and electricians. And, well, they didn't actually talk about waitresses or school bus drivers, and talking about how, you know, they're fighting for the little guy. On this side, we know that those Conservatives don't care about people that are pulling a paycheck, but rather they're focused on their ultra-rich friends.
The Honourable Member from Hamilton Centre.
Yesterday, when the Minister of Labour was asked about supporting the bargaining rights of the Teamsters rail workers, he boasted about the government's success rate in trampling on the workers' rights to negotiating a fair deal. The Liberals say they support workers, but then they pull the rug out from under them when they try to negotiate. So instead of forcing a pathway towards binding arbitration on the rail workers, will the Minister of Labour respect the collective bargaining rights of the Teamsters and support their call to stagger negotiations in order to avoid a rail shutdown?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
That guy is just so freaking fake.
Government has had the back of workers from the get-go. First thing that we ever did was reverse the most anti-union legislation ever created in this House of Commons by the Conservative government. And then, further, we went on to do replacement worker legislation. And I'm pleased that that passed. Right now, the minister was absolutely correct. There are negotiations. They're at the table. Mediators, we believe in our mediators that have a 96% success rate. We're confident in the collective bargaining, and we know that the best deals are made at the table, and we encourage those conversations to continue.
The Honourable Member from Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, today the UN released their annual report on children and armed conflict. The report verifies cases of war crimes against children in Gaza, West Bank, and Israel is more than anywhere else in the world. It is an appalling and alarming confirmation of the grave violations taking place. Mr. Speaker, children are dying and the Liberals are failing them. When? What date will the government finally impose sanctions on those responsible for violence against children, including Netanyahu's war cabinet?
Not our war.
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I've said it many times in this House, the situation in Gaza is catastrophic. Too many children, too many women have died, and that is why the violence must stop. That is why we need a ceasefire now. That's why hostages must be released. That's why civilians must be protected. And that's why humanitarian aid needs to get into Gaza. We need to make sure that both parties support the Biden proposal. The Prime Minister and G7 Prime Ministers and leaders are in Italy as we speak, and I really hope that we can bring back peace to the Middle East.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, he has developed an extreme obsession with taxing farmers. First it was the carbon tax, now it's the capital gains tax increase. That means that a 74-year-old farmer back home who has worked his whole life will struggle to pay off his debts and enjoy his retirement. And it makes things even harder for the next generation of farm families. Without the family farm, big multinational conglomerates will take over. How is that fair for Canadians?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader doesn't stand with workers, and he certainly does not stand with Canada's farmers. It's shameful the Leader of the Conservatives hides behind farmers and workers to justify his opposition to our plan for tax fairness. We are, in fact, increasing the capital gains sheltering for farmers by boosting the lifetime exemption for qualified farming properties to $1.25 million per owner. And when combined with the $250,000 threshold, farmers are going to be better off. We are standing up on this side of the House for Canada's agriculture. They're standing up for the 0.13%, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Cyprus from Cypress Hills grasslands.
Well, Mr. Speaker, farmers are supposed to feed families, not the Prime Minister's extreme obsessions. Right. This new tax is devastating for everyone from farm to table. Canada's food professor said yesterday to suggest that this change only affects a minimal number of Canadians is misleading. I think it actually affects a lot of businesses, including in the agri-food sector, and I would start with farmers. Mr. Speaker, we need to keep family farms alive, but now they're under attack by these Liberals. How is that fair, and how can the Ag Minister sit quietly and let this happen?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition hasn't seen a hay baler or the top of a combine in his life. And what we've done is, over here, is made it better for farmers by increasing the lifetime exemption and extending new provisions to farmers to ensure that that capital gains do not affect them. Farmers will, in fact, be better off under this plan for tax fairness, just like waitresses, just like airline stewardesses, just like janitors, just like electricians, just like plumbers, just like 99.87% of Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
Over 6 million Canadians do not have access to a family doctor. According to the Commonwealth Fund, after 9 years of this Liberal NDP government, the number of Canadians without access to a regular care provider has doubled. And what is this government's solution to the doctor shortage? Tax them out of the country. This healthcare killing tax on healthcare providers will force them to practice elsewhere, making the doctor shortage crisis even worse. Mr. Speaker, how is that fair? How many communities will go without doctors because they are leaving Canada due to this Prime Minister's new tax?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
It's interesting, Mr. Speaker. The only time the Conservatives have asked about health care or a shortage of doctors in this House is when there was a proposal to create a more fair tax system that asked the 0.13% to pay a little bit more. Suddenly now they're interested in health care. But you know what's not going to help add doctors? Conservative cuts. The $200 billion that we've invested with 26 health agreements in every province and every territory is making sure we see progress every day in our health system. From dental care to pharmacare to primary care. And what's going to stop that dead in its tracks is the cuts the Conservatives want to bring. And we're here to make sure they don't get to do it.
Is he wearing a bow tie?
Lennox and Addington.
The Liberals are scrambling and their facts do not add up. Kneecapping our healthcare providers to pay for this government's credit card bill is bad fiscal policy and it's bad healthcare policy. The key to sound, robust healthcare system is preventative medicine, ensuring that Canadians get timely access to healthcare that they need. This not only saves lives, Mr. Speaker, it saves government money. Increasing the tax burden on doctors who carry out this work will only force doctors out of the country. Mr. Speaker, when will this pompous Prime Minister finally listen to the thousands of people on wait lists?
As the honourable member is a well-respected member of the House, I'm just going to ask her very quickly just to withdraw that one word because it does refer to an individual member.
I'll withdraw, thank you.
And I thank the honourable member for doing so.
And I thank the House Speaker for thanking me.
You're out of arguments,
come on.
insults, and asking the 0.13% to pay a little bit more so that we can have fairness and equity in our tax system, making sure that a nurse doesn't pay a higher marginal rate of tax than a millionaire. Mr. Speaker, that is fundamentally unfair. But you know what will kneecap our healthcare system, Mr. Speaker? The 200,000 seniors now in just 6 weeks have got dental care. The Conservatives want to take that away. Pharmacare, making sure that a diabetes patient gets the medicine that they need. They want to cut that, Mr. Speaker. That will kneecap our healthcare system. We will not allow that to happen.
Mr. Speaker, last week we learned that Canadian rents are at an all-time high, averaging $2,200 a month. And it's only going to get worse. the Canadian Federation of Apartment Associations says the new Liberal capital gains tax will discourage construction of new rental homes. The NDP Liberal government is crushing the prospect of bringing new rental units into our communities. What part of that says generational fairness?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, we say that the Conservatives don't care, and here's proof. This tax change would allow for more revenue to be directed to childcare, pharmacare, dental care, and measures to address the housing crisis. In fact, I direct the new member, and he is a new member, to look at their housing plan, which actually would tax home builders. So today when he raises concerns about home building and taxation, it's their plan that's the problem, Mr. Speaker. We have a plan. We're going to put in place that plan. We're going to solve the housing crisis.
Here, here. You've had 9 years. You've created a housing crisis.
Mr. Speaker, the president of the real estate company RE/MAX agrees that the Liberals' spin on their new tax hikes are bogus. I'd like to quote them, if I might. The federal government has been vocal about this only targeting the wealthiest of the wealthy. It's just not true. Wow. I think that is going to penalize more average Canadians than were intended. So my question is very simple. When will this government take the housing crisis seriously and stop letting down an entire generation of Canadians?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, this government has put in place a policy to lift GST off of the construction of purpose-built rentals. They want to maintain GST on the construction of purpose-built rentals. You won't get more apartments built that way, something that was verified at the House of Commons Committee responsible for housing just a few days ago when the Conservatives raised this point. Furthermore, if he wants to talk quotes, he can go back to the proceedings of the Federal Finance Committee meeting a few months ago when their housing plan was studied by the Department of Finance that showed that their plan will lead to less homes built, Mr. Speaker.
That's where we're going to end the video, everyone. I would love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. On your way out, I would like to encourage you guys to smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't yet already, and we will see you in the next one. Bye for now.